Webinar is now live. Webinar is being recorded, and the rascals start trickling in one by one. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody from wherever you're from today. I am genuinely honored and humbled to be here with the opportunity to speak with Debra Farber from Hedera Hashgraph. Debra, what I'd like to say before anything is thank you. And some of the audience, they may not be familiar with yourself and what you do over at Hedera. So would you like to give a very quick introduction as far as like your role over there?
Yeah, sure. So I'm technically an independent contractor. I have my own company called Principled LLC, but I serve as privacy strategist at Hedera in a more of an external thought leadership perspective. So I'm working really closely with the marketing team and to understand all the different components of the Hedera network and network services. And I've been writing a white paper, which I swear to God, I've been talking, it's like when white paper at this point.
Yeah.
But it's completely done. It's like literally, and it's final legs of being reviewed and at layout at this moment. Like I was really hoping it would come out today so that I could be like, look, this is what I do, right? But I want to say I'll come out later today or tomorrow, but it most likely will come out this week.
Very cool.
And so in it, what I really, so I could expound on this, but like my role is really external thought leadership as like one sentence. But I don't know how much you want me to expound beyond
Sure,
that.
as much as we need to understand it a little more, because everyone in here, they want to know as much as they can, so we can get as dense as possible.
Sure. So Hedera has such a focus on enterprise adoption, enterprise tech. That's really, we kind of have this belief that once we've got, this is how the tokenomics work, that once we have, a lot of throughput, a lot of network use that's coming from enterprise adoption, it's really going to be some step function, that's going to make the not only the price soar, which makes the company more secure, but to everybody's benefit, right? To increase the value of the network, you need a lot of enterprise adoption. So where do I come from? Enterprise. That's my thing. B2B and privacy. I've been doing privacy for 16 years. And in Europe, you probably refer to it more as data protection. They're really kind of, those things are opposite sides of the same coin. And we could get into that in a second, but enterprises really need to comply with global data protection laws that also enshrine our right to, well, they don't enshrine our right, they protect our privacy rights as well. And so in order to have enterprise adoption, you need to meet a whole bunch of, I don't want to say compliance requirements, because this is really something that should be part of core strategy. But you have to meet a certain bunch of requirements. And what I did when I set out to write this white paper was I really saw a gap of knowledge in the crypto community as to what does privacy mean? What are its implications? What does data protection mean? And how does it at all relate to Web3? And that's pretty much, I kind of reached out to Hedera and they reached out to me. It was kind of like one of these, I was tweeting a little bit when I found out about them. They're like, hey, do you want to have a conversation here? And so
that's crazy.
Beautiful magic happened when I left Amazon, and all of a sudden I had this wonderful opportunity to be able to educate and help people really understand, like, what does it mean when we talk about privacy? Because I guarantee you it's way more than transactional privacy, where we are just looking at did someone see how I spent my cat, or spent my crypto? It's way beyond that, right? When we are talking about Facebook and feeling like surveillance capitalism or the advertising industry, like none of that has anything to do with Web3, right? We still need to take the challenges of Web2 and fix them. And as we're building this new Web3 ethical, reliable trust world, we need to make sure we're baking in the right privacy and data protection controls.
And something interesting that you said is like global compliance, like across different jurisdictions and things like that. Like me personally, I love assets that are looking to be compliant from day one. A lot of people, they're very rebellious. They come from that background where it's like, let's get rid of governments and banks. And myself, coming from the 2017 bull run, I know damn well that we're not getting rid of governments and banks and all these institutions, because I got burned investing in the things that I thought were going to replace them. All right, but that's another story. Okay, that's
We
another
should be
story for
interviewing
another
you.
day.
I want to hear
No,
about
no,
that one day.
we will one day. We will one day. But so I've taken a more mature route when it comes to crypto and saying, all right, we're going to work with the system to help us out of whatever situations we're in so we could better the world, right? So that's what I'm really looking at. But what are some things that go into making things globally compliant? And before we started, I actually wanted to know, just for everyone in the audience as well, what is the difference between privacy and data protection, and how deep does it go as far as privacy with Hedera, and what exactly does that mean?
Okay, well, those are two separate questions. So the
Yeah.
first is, and I'm going to forget the second one, so you're going to have to repeat that.
No worries,
I can't
no
hold
worries.
those two thoughts at once. But the first, so I'll answer the first one first. So privacy is, I mean, privacy has so many meanings, so many different things. So I will say that in the context of history, when we first had privacy torts, which is illegal, like when you have a civil right against somebody else, right? Like that's kind of what a tort is kind of your civil rights. God, I'm going back to law school here. How do I define tort? Skip that. So where we had these concepts of like, you have a right to be let alone, and you have a, and not be annoyed by people. Modern day equivalent, look at can spam, right? You're not allowed to spam the hell out of people. You have a right to not have spam, basically, at least in the United States. And then, so then you have other torts like, the right to not have someone misappropriate your name and likeness and use it for selling of their product, right? Like these are things that make sense to us, right? It's like really privacy is kind of like centered around rights around our own identity and how we're represented in different spaces. And that's kind of one view of what privacy means. Others is like a right not to be surveilled, right? Like it all kind of comes down to this fundamental, like I should have control over like my own space and whatever that means, my personal space or attributes about myself that are known in a particular context. I want to make clear, these are about attributes that are known. And while the reason I'm emphasizing that is I believe anonymity, like pure anonymity, like to anonymize, like that is taking it out of a privacy problem because you no longer have an identity attached to anything. I don't consider that a privacy thing. I think I look at anonymity as a free speech thing. We could talk about that separately so I can get back on track with this topic. So in the United States, in our Constitution, we don't have this concept of privacy enshrined in our Constitution. We've had some interpretations where we say there's a penumbra of rights and this has been held, and but there's no direct, you have a right to be let alone, you have a right to be, we have a right to freedom, liberty, property, right? All of these things, but privacy is not one of them that's like directly mentioned in the US Constitution. It is, however, in Europe's Constitution and the European Union.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Right. So if you already have the right, and we do have it in the California Constitution as well. There might be some other states. I just happen to know California has it. So it's not impossible to do. It's just interesting. Like so now you have that right. You can enshrine it. You could add additional protections later on, whatever. And so the EU kind of took this approach. We already have a right to privacy. Now, data protection is all the rules that will protect your right to privacy, your rights to transparency, your rights to all your other rights. So GDPR is not just about privacy. It's GDPR being the general data protection regulation that the EU has become the gold star of what privacy regulations should look like. And we use the word privacy here in the United States a little bit to mean a lot of things. The EU, it's got a little more of a definition that's specific, where the right is privacy and data protection is all the privacy, security, portability, like all the rules around, I guess, ethically using personal data.
Got it.
And then personal data is anything that's linked or linkable to an identifier. So we're talking anything that's linked to my name, anything that's linked to, well, I'm not in Europe right now, so maybe that's not a great idea, but anything. Jordan, are you in the UK?
I am in the UK.
Okay, I'll use, oh, you're the UK is not part of the
Brexit's
EU
weird,
anymore.
Mum.
Wow.
Spoiled
Wow,
again.
that's incredible.
That's it. Rub salt in the wounds, Debra. That's it.
Yeah. And the UK is doing some interesting things right now in terms of kind of chipping away at some of those rights. So I'm not following that as closely, but so yeah, the EU basically has a whole lot of principles about, and it's principle based as opposed to the EU. So you'll have a principle that doesn't sound like a rule. It kind of sounds like guidelines, but it's not. It's supposed to give a company flexibility in how they achieve compliance, or that commitment to the customer or the individual. They call it data subjects, but I'm going to just keep talking if you don't ask me another question.
No. It's all very interesting, and it's a lot because this is all back end things that are important infrastructure behind projects that need to be thought about. That us common man, we don't have to think. We're just like, okay, look at these projects, we like it, right? Well, for me personally, I do have to tell you a little secret. And my VIPs know this, my channel knows this. I actually proposed to Hedera Hashgraph recently. I bent the knee, I gave her a ring. She said yes. We're in a happily committed relationship. I'm not looking to get rid of my Hedera, right? Because I really like the project. But there are plenty of reasons why. And one of them, and it's going to kind of tie in with what I was speaking about earlier. One of them is Alliance Block. I noticed that there is a partnership between Hedera and Alliance Block. And we talk about the across different jurisdictions and things like that. I know that Alliance Block is aiming to be the first globally compliant decentralized capital market, and essentially like kind of merge DeFi with traditional finance together. Right. So
right.
The reason that's so interesting is because we're in the XRP community. We big fans of XRP, and we have the Flair network that will be releasing their Spark tokens when the network officially launches within a couple months. We're all frustrated because of the delay and things like that, but they did release that they're partnered with Alliance Block to help bridge things together, right? Like me, I'm not the techiest dude. I don't have the best technical know-how in explaining things, but I know that connections are made between projects, like little wink wink things. What I'm curious to know is, let's see. What I'm curious to know is because I did see that Hugo, the CEO of Flair, had a Thinking Crypto interview talking about how current bridge models have a concentration of risk. And I know that Alliance Block has to do with bridges. What I was curious to know is, will Alliance Block be something that can connect Hedera and Flair networks together in the future?
Right. So, I definitely think that it's important that there are bridges between public networks, because it's beneficial for the whole ecosystem, that assets on one network can be ported over to, or accessed by other networks, right? So that's the best part of that is like the portability, data portability. And so for me, this meets a data protection, EU data protection requirement of that you be allowed to be able to take your data from one provider and port it over to another. So data portability for me is, obviously hugely important. Unfortunately, as an independent contractor, I don't have specific insight into Alliance Block's plans, but it is great to see the interoperability in the broader ecosystem as a whole.
Very nice.
So I just don't know more information in this particular instance.
No worries. But I'm just glad that you addressed that point, because this is how I like the community to think. It's like, even if we don't know for sure, we can draw connections and look at different use cases and how things go. And then we can ask the experts like yourself. And regardless of whether we learn it right away, we have it in our minds, right? So that's very powerful. And thank you for stating that. One thing I do want to ask as well is that I'm personally extremely bullish on Hedera NFTs, right? I'm very, very bullish on them. I think they're extremely undervalued. I'm aware that Immutable Holdings holds the NFT.com domain name, and Jordan Freed is, I believe, the CEO of Immutable Holdings. So that what that tells me is NFT.com will run on Hedera, right? That's very nice.
I mean, that's my assumption. It would seem silly not to, given that
Right.
Jordan, Jordan knows all the benefits of Hedera, like, so I could only imagine there seems to be a reason that he's not, stating who it runs on, and we'll let him make that, make it known why, in the future. Probably doesn't want to answer all the questions about Hedera right now. It's not his focus, to be honest. This is just my guess. I've actually never met him, but I think the world of what he's building.
Very nice. What I do want to ask though, to kind of go along those lines is, are there any Hedera NFT projects that you're currently looking at that you see as, oh, that's very interesting?
Yeah, so I think NFTs are really cool, and I think they're cool concepts. But the area that I'm playing in, again, is the area, like, I'm such a geek about privacy, security, data protection, governance, that kind of space, that I really like the NFTs. I love them all. Okay, I can't pick between them, because to me, the different JPEGs and different iterations. Like, so far, I've only played around where I've won something in a competition. I haven't gone buying anything, because the focus that I've had, again, is privacy. So companies like Acor, which I did do a Hedera NFT related webinar on, so you could find this. It's on Hedera's website. But Acor uses NFTs for its rights hash product, which actually stores your digital rights as an NFT, right? And so areas like that, they're using NFTs in ways not only transferring value externally between wallets of art, right? Obviously, we know it's way beyond art, and it's real estate, it's other things. We could tokenize, fractionalize things. But for me, I'm really most excited about companies like Acor that are using NFTs for enterprise real world use cases, because it's just, it's taking this technology and applying it back to a real world problem that a company is trying to fix. And that can be like real-time auditability, right? If you want, instead of having to do all this discovery to figure out where your personal data is and what rights are attached and what purposes you're allowed to use the data for and all that, you can kind of deploy deploy NFTs basically. And he's actually using Hedera consensus service for some and Hedera token service for others, because you don't always need the tokens to go off, be transferred to someone else. Sometimes being a native token, enables a lot of benefit as well. And I think, rights hash by Acor is a perfect example of that. So not to say I'm playing around in that space, but I'm definitely putting my attention more towards these corporate uses. I don't want to say practical. Art is so practical. I mean, these enterprise corporate uses of NFTs are what interests me the most.
I know what you mean. It's more about the utility of them as opposed to the speculative value of some of these pieces of art, right? So
right. And I love the fact that people are playing and having so much fun with the art. It's bringing in so many different, members of the ecosystem. It's bringing in a completely fresh area. I'm even trying to get my sister who dabbles in, for fun, doing these painting lately. And I'm like, you should turn those into NFTs. And she's like, what are NFTs? I'm like, okay, you go get really, really, really into, NFTs and go learn this, because it's an area I'm not giving as much of my attention when it comes to this space. I there's only so many hours of the day.
Yes. That's very true. That's very true. And it's a lot, because see, I'm still trying to figure out what XRP is, right? I'm kidding. But it's true. It's like every single day, a new NFT launches with different property rights in each, and it can be a lot. We're still trying to figure out why we should convert our real money into internet money, which the real money isn't so real after all, right? So
Yeah.
it's a hard barrier of entry. And what I need to stress to everyone in the audience is the reason we take the time out when we have these type of discussions is so that we can continue to be one step ahead of the game. And as far as the learning curve is concerned, because these technologies, they will make an impact. They will make a core infrastructure shift into the digital age. Like a good friend of mine, King Solomon, and everyone in this community knows who he is. He's an important contributor. He one time he stated that Hedera hash graph future proofs the future proof, right? And what I'm gonna ask you is, what does that statement mean to you? Like, how can that be applied when it comes to Hedera? The reason I ask is because I don't even know what Hedera could do. I heard some interesting things the other day, and I want to
Oh,
ask you
okay.
that as well.
Yeah. So, when you say future proof like that, it makes me wish I understood at a Lehman level the virtual voting and gossip about gossip, right? Like I kind of I get the basics like the rest of you and trust in the math. So I think I might answer it a little differently, and I'll just kind of answer it as like, what do I think like the best most exciting, valuable parts or different, unique part of Hashgraph. And I'd say right now, what I'm most excited about is the ability to do microtransactions in a way that's economically viable, right? And so because Hedera has solved the trilemma, the blockchain trilemma, and it has fast, it could scale. It's got the incredibly high TPS that's throttled down to 10,000 TPS. And it's always the average fee is just 1,000th of a penny, which by being attached to a US dollar value, what that does is it allows enterprises to really budget for the number of transactions they're expecting in a quarter, a year, whatever their budgeting really entails. And this is what enterprises need. They need some level of, I want to say certainty, but of some level of certainty where they can budget for things and get approval. You can't do that right now for so much where high gas fees are clogging up a network and making it expensive. You're not necessarily sure how much it's going to cost for a transaction of something. And so for me, it's this capability to do microtransactions that's opening up completely new markets. So, a great example is the ability to, like, if I had solar on my, if I had solar panels on my roof, and I ended up using that energy, but I had excess energy. Now maybe I could sell it back to the energy grid, or I could sell it to my neighbor down the street. Like these are becoming economically viable. And there is a company that's working on that, and I just don't remember the name, and I feel like a fool, but it's okay. We can look it up. The point is that Hedera is able to, well, one, I love that it does those things I just said. The other is that as it's been built, and I keep repeating this different places, but Jim Nasser, who is the CEO of Acor, has said this to me while I was still kind of really learning the Hedera network services, and it resonated because it made sense. And I'm going to say the same to you. He says, what I love so much about Acor is that it meets my expectations of a real-time, like, engineering system, like a real-time system. Like it got everything works in real time, right? Like and so as such, he's been able to create this like real-time audit capability using NFTs, and that's just super commendable. So things along those lines that really differentiate Hedera from other networks, right? And we pick it apart where we'll be like, okay, so whatever, Hedera ties stuff to fiat. Okay, big deal. Or, oh, okay, so they're throttling down. They're able to do 10,000 TPS today. But what we really need to be looking at is like threading that together. What does it all mean? And what it means is that Hedera is a beast of a network that has been thoughtful for the long term, the long haul. It considers itself a 100-year company, meaning it's not deploying short-term thinking. It's deploying long-term thinking. What do we need to do for the next, the first phase, the second phase, right? We have we're like, yeah, we're not 100% decentralized today. So people pointing that out, it's like, yeah, and here is our plan to plan towards decentralization, right? There's a stepped plan that needs to take place and happen, and it's thoughtful, and the company, is super transparent about it. And it's all of these things in this long-term thinking that has made me, and the powerful tech behind it, that has gotten me really excited about Hedera. And I think it's gotten, so many people, not just, you've got your retail investors, you've got your, but you also have like large companies as well that are just, this is something deployable and usable for public trust that they just don't have today.
And I really like the point you brought about the micropayments, the low fees and the fast transaction times, because just the other day, a couple weeks ago, we saw that for a $100,000 US tether transaction, it costs $23 million in gas fees. Right, so that's 230 times what you were sending in just gas fees alone. Right?
And there's so many stakeholders in the network that frustrates, right? So there's your, as a retail speculator, maybe you're not able to get your, NFT you're not able to sell your NFT, and you want to because someone's going to buy it for more or whatever, because it just costs too much. Or so it could affect retailers, or not retailers, but retail investors. It could affect companies because, there's less certainty in the market, and they don't understand how much it's going to cost them to run this program anymore, right? That might then impact, institutional investors. And so this whole market is congested by a lot of other, non-Hedera based.
I love it. I love how you said that. So I'm gonna kind of trap you with saying that real quick and really hammer that message home. We all know that Ethereum, it's kind of like the mother of the crypto space, right? It birthed this entire community of coins. It was smart contracts. It was the first one to do that. However, we see that it's having scalability issues, and that ETH 2.0 keeps getting pushed back a little bit. I don't believe that anything will be an Ethereum killer, because Ethereum has placed itself right at the heart of the global blockchain industry. It's going to survive, and nothing's going to kill it. But I think something one day will surpass it. Do you think Hedera could be one of those coins that has the potential to surpass Ethereum?
Personally, yeah. I'm putting my whole career, I don't want to say my whole career, but I'm throwing my weight to, towards Hedera. This is, I think the product is genius. I think Lehman is a genius. And I get it. As an enterprise person, Hedera makes sense to me to be used by enterprises. Now, of course, I want to make clear, anyone can use Hedera. But the fact that it's built as an enterprise grade network that's still affordable and available to anyone, is a huge thing. Where does that exist anywhere in Web 2 tech? Maybe Google, maybe you get access to their, I'm just thinking here out loud, but there's very few instances where the everyday person who wants to just build whatever they want to build can have access to enterprise tech for either for free or for the same price, or for the generally available, except maybe open source, right? Which Hedera is, with the exception of the patent on the hash graph itself. So I guess I'm reevaluating that. And then the original point was, I'm trying to think, hammer the point home that, so Ethereum definitely has, that's where all the VC money has gone, right? Yeah. So you've got two factors going there. You've got so much money is in play that people have picked their bets, that no one's kind of looking behind them to see what's coming next. So there's that, but there's also, all the development, I don't want to say all, but so much development has been going on in the Ethereum space. That's so much knowledge about how to build an Ethereum is has been built, and that's not going away. And so, I think Ethereum is going to do just fine. I think it'll be doing well for years to come. I just think that there's challenges right now, and there's absolutely good reasons to take a look at the Hedera network and services. And I, personally, I'm not going to offer anything to anyone else about how they think about what networks they use, but I'm so sold on Hedera that I will look at, if someone's like, look at this project, what do you think? I'm going to be like, all right, well, I'm going to look at it in the context of Hedera is what I know first, and I compare everything else against Hedera. Most people in crypto have, kind of grew up in it a little more. I don't want to say most, but a lot of people. So they started with Bitcoin and then Ethereum, and then then they move on to others like Hedera, and they're comparing it to what they know of Ethereum. That's just not how I got into the space. So it's a little backwards for me. And I feel like I lucked out by really getting involved in Hedera first, because now I feel like I've got the gold star of what a public trust network should look like, and with thoughtful architecture and ongoing development, that I compare everything to Hedera. And that's, I think, been an easier way, since it's I think it's superior to most, that I think it's an easier way for me to see what's actually novel elsewhere, and what is actually different in a better way to Hedera piecemeal, but looking at other projects and networks.
And I do think that's a big part of the problem, right? Because we in the XRP community, that's really where we specialize in. That's where I come from. But we're going through a lawsuit right now. Ripple's going through a lawsuit right now. And the whole community has been exposing some corruption with Lubin and Novogratz and some SEC potential conflicts of interest. And it's a whole show that's going on in this. Like, we see a lot of nonsense. So politics is playing a role, like the interest behind Ethereum is playing a role on why it's exploding, why it's propped up, even though the tech may be antiquated to other solutions like Hedera that's in the open market. Now, right. Before we continue, I do have to reemphasize this fact. How many years do you have an experience in enterprise?
Oh gosh. In enterprise privacy, security, and governance, 16 years.
16 years.
Then there was probably, I'd say about 16 years in enterprise.
And the reason I'm stressing that point is because everyone that's listening at home, this is an expert in what she does, telling you what she believes the best solution is, right? I personally don't own any Ethereum anymore, because anything I'd put into Ether, I put into Hedera. Why would I? It's like, I feel like, people in crypto are used to what they know and used to how things have always been. Now looking forward to how things are going to be. We're at the point where utility and adoption is going to ramp up. NFTs have definitely brought to the public eye this digital space, and people aren't going to want, $23 million transaction fees, or, maybe an hour to get your things. They want things that are cheap, less than a penny. It takes 3 seconds, and Hedera does fit that bill. So that's important. That's important, guys. Hammer at home.
Yes, but it's important.
Let's see. So there are a couple more things I really want to power through. So as a powerful infrastructure project, I believe that Hedera will kill it for the years to come. I get feelings about Hedera similar to when Ether was first getting started in 2016, 17. That's why I proposed to Hedera, right? So if Hedera were to be successful, what value would it be providing to the world? And I know we kind of touched on it already, but let me really narrow it down here. What target market, what do you think the possibilities are as far as the total market Hedera can get if it happens to do what we both think it can do? Right.
So it goes back to Hedera's vision. It aims to be the trust layer of the internet. It's not aiming to be the best coin, right? It's aiming to be the trust layer of the internet. And that's a bold mission. And it's one that I'm so excited by. I joined the team, and because there's been so much mistrust in the Web 2 world. There's been a lack of protocols for privacy, security, trust. And then, so basically, because of the Hedera, it has solved the blockchain trilemma. It can achieve all the goals that blockchain set out to do, but because it isn't blockchain and it's hash graph, and it can do it, it can do all three things all at once. In the end, and it's a public network, right? Not a private deployed DLT solution. It is public DLT solution. The whole goal is to underlie the, pretty much commerce, transactions. It could be outside of just financial payments. So any type of transaction at all, you want to be able to trust. You want to have like not trust the other person on the other side of the transaction, but still have a trusted result in the end. And that's what Hedera gives you, right? Like the ability to have trust where there is none. And so by being the bottom layer and that network layer, and building all on top of it, it's really, you can inherit the trust from the network with the dApps and the DAOs or any app nets or whatever you're creating on top of it. And so one of the reasons I really gravitated towards Hedera is that I've been trying to get companies in a Web 2 world to really fix the problems and the privacy debt, technical debt that they've had out there for so long. And the technical debt just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you see more breaches and more, accidents with people's personal data and so the rallying cry on my end and people, in my profession has been shift left and, build with privacy by design and use privacy engineering principles. But it's just taking so long to get enterprises to really reverse their boat, including most of the companies I've worked for.
Yes.
That I'm so frustrated that I see this as an opportunity here where we're building a new world. And at the network layer, we build in the right things. We're thinking about identity differently, right? I mean, it's not just Hedera, it's the whole industry is thinking identity differently. We should own our own keys, right? Not some corporation. All of these, decentralized identifiers and identities, these just, self-sovereign kind of perspectives, right? This is changing, but then we put it into an environment like, I don't want to say environment, like a network services like what Hedera has to offer. And then the end result is that you get public trust, right? So you're going to be inheriting that. And so it just kind of like Ivy, which is what Hedera is an English Ivy. It's going to slowly spread around the world, spread this public trust around the world until it's everywhere. And, when it becomes slowly spreading to being everywhere, we don't have timeframes on that, right? Even Lehman talks about there being some step function where eventually we're not going to necessarily even know that all of a sudden this giant use case is going to deploy to the network that completely changes the game. And no one can predict that. I mean, we can predict based on things that we see, and that this is where BEARABLE Bull, you come in, to serve that purpose for the retail and institutional investor world. It's not the world I play in. I'm here more on the tech side, but yeah, I think that the main thing is the public trust. Yes. That's what everyone's going to be eventually getting from Hedera. That's the big benefit. That's the world, benefit that you're going to get. And I say world benefit. I mean, Deepak Chopra is building on Hedera. Like Sevalove just, he just announced Sevalove, and I mean, it's just communities and communities of change agents are choosing Hedera to build that public trust and change. So it's really exciting times.
And I love how bold Hedera is aiming to be, because I tell all my students this and my audience this. I love cryptos that shoot for the stars, because even if they fail, they'll land on the moon, right? Because failures make you better and you fail upwards, right? I personally don't think there's going to fail. I think you guys have already succeeded and are being very, very humble. But here's what I'm going to say. XRP, we have a saying in the XRP community called the Internet of Value, right? Where we believe we're trying to come after all the damn money. I always say that. We're after all the damn money. Well, Hedera Hashgraph is going for all the trust layer of the internet, right? In 2017, I invested in this crypto called Substratum that was claiming to be the new decentralized internet. Now that project came and went, and it failed, and it did some speculative price action. It was all good, but people got burned. Right? A failed project. I don't think Hedera is going to fail, because if a failed project like this could do some explosive things with nothing, something like Hedera that has proven partners, individuals like yourself, and much better use case and utility, I do believe there's plenty of runway for that. And people should be um, definitely considering educating yourselves more, even after this interview is posted, right? We all have to make our own decisions, but I still think we are rock bottom relative to where we're going in the future, right?
Right. And everyone wants to know, like, well, when is it going to change? Right. I mean, like, who knows? Right. We can't plan that stuff. Like the company itself, like, Hedera can't plan when it's going to, when it's going to have that major step function. But all we can say is that the price needs to go up significantly in order to secure the network and be able to release, more coins and more supply, right? Because for Hedera, part of the security of the network is that you can never have more than 1/3 of the network taken over by any one actor. But less than 1/3, you're still got a trust. You've got trust in the network. So we need to make it so that the price, not make it, but we need it so that the price is high enough where some whale can't manipulate the market just but by buying so many of the coins and then resulting in having more than 1/3 of them. So like I said, this is very thoughtful about the way that stuff's released from Treasury. Everything is thought out from a compliance standpoint. Hedera kind of leans into regulation, going, yeah, certainty in the market's going to be helpful to the people who are going to use our network, right? So regulation's good. I think people just have generally retail speculators have a knee-jerk reaction to the word regulation. Like, it just means put some rules in place. We could disagree on what regulations work and what regulations don't, but we shouldn't have a knee-jerk reaction to regulations. Like, there's a lot of things to discuss, I think, and I would love to see more rules. I'm a rules person, so I mean, I went to law school. I have a law degree, so rules make sense to me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's kind of the Wild West, and we're not sure necessarily why one company's more ethical, doing better, whatever, than another. So, and then we want protections for speculators, because right now speculators have no protections.
Yes,
right? Or maybe we don't want regulations for speculators. Depends on who you are. But personally, I think we could probably do with some regulation.
Some things to prevent rug pulls like Squid Games, right? Because that's very real. And people come in with some money, and people exit scam and things like that, and it's not fun. It's not fun for anyone. We do have to take responsibility for getting involved in nonsense cryptos, right? I teach that every day, but these things do happen, and that's why people in this community, we've been screaming for regulatory clarity for a long time. Just clarity. Just let us know what the guardrails are, right? So we can play within that game, because that is what Brad Garlinghouse at Ripple has been saying has been limiting adoption specifically in the US. So we all 100% resonate with exactly what you're saying. But kind of to go along those lines, with clarity, we believe that will come more utility of not only XRP, the token that everyone in this community truly knows, but networks like Hedera and others, right? So something that I do want to ask is, so we have MTech showing a paper discussing Project New Dawn, right? And Hedera is mentioned. And what I'm curious to know is, will Hedera be involved in making or helping build the infrastructure for a US central bank digital currency?
Right. So, great question. I don't know so I could give you my perspective and what I think, but I have no inside knowledge. So I'm reading the same stuff you guys read. And so So Hedera has been working with MTech to, I believe, just to describe like how it could be part of the solutions, right? Whether it's a particular bank is actually talking to MTech and Hedera about deployment, I have no insight into. I hope so, but I don't know. What I will say here is I just want to maybe prevent conflation of some ideas. So for your audience, not that you indicated any misunderstanding. So Hedera will never be the distributed ledger technology that is deployed for the central banks. Because it's a public network, it's not a private network, right? They'll probably, whether it's something like IBM Hyperledger, R3 Corda, something else in that enterprise DLT space, or it's some other network that I'm not even sure which ones are playing or vying for CBDCs. It will not be Hedera. Hedera is a public network for public trust. And so what I want your listeners to understand is where Hedera could, and I hope will, and maybe I should say shall, I don't know, be deployed would be for when central CBDCs want to transact outside of their own CBDC DLT. And they want to transact, let's say, with a set of banks around the world, or, maybe it's not, one is banks around the world. Then they need a public network within which that they need to be able to, to trust that those transactions had finality. Hedera has finality in seconds. They want to trust they have that throughput, that it can scale, like all of the same things we're looking for, but this would be for public trust. The reason I'm emphasizing this is, I lurk in Reddit, and
that's great.
I sometimes comment as me. I'm identified as, Hedera strategist, Debra Farber, so that it would carry weight. If I had an opinion, I'd be like, no, I'm working there, guys. Like, and so there, I'm seeing people really like getting frustrated, like, or looking at breadcrumbs that they're streaming together these ideas or linking together these ideas that they find, and they're like, wait a minute, if Hyperledger, if IBM is here and IBM is on the the governance council for Hedera, why would IBM be using this and not Hedera? And you're like, because IBM deploys distributed ledger tech for private organizations. This is why they're a good partner. So this is the reason I'm trying to explain, trying to educate that the CBDCs is a multiplayer space, and it's not Hedera or bust. It's going to be several players for any CBDC architecture, and that'll hopefully could include Hedera for public consensus and trust. Yeah.
Very nice. And I think that's very important, because we're good at putting connections together to things like, oh, we saw this, and then the IBMs and all that. But then at the end of the day, there's like some tech that is involved in this as well. That means, yes, it's a reality, or no, it's just, some nonsense that we formulated. So I'm very glad that you hammer it home that, yes, this is something that can happen, but really distinguish how things can really work, right? So that's very important. But kind of to stay on the topic of central bank digital currencies, right? Because the XRP community, Ripple, and all that, we're in this CBDC space. Like we have our ears to the streets when it comes to that. Ripple recently came out with the private ledger for CBDCs and things like that. So I'm just like, okay, privacy. Let's talk about this. What I'm curious to know is, as far as privacy for individuals are concerned, central bank digital currencies, I don't like them. Not really, right? I don't really like them. What is your take on the privacy aspect for normal citizens with central bank digital currencies?
It's a great question. I have to admit, it's one I've kind of not dived deep enough in. I'm constantly still reading up on it myself. Because again, my perspective is like, I love the tech and I want to, fix enterprise privacy problems, right? So when you talk transactional privacy and individuals, it's a different space. So I get the concept of wanting to keep cash experience as being a fungible bearer instrument, right? That is not tracked anywhere, right? Like I get the desire to want to keep that away from being tracked by others, especially the government. But I also worked at Visa on the global public policy team, and my portfolio was security and privacy. And privacy was like literally this much. It was all security. And for the most part, I was working a lot on cybercrime. Cybercrime, biometric authentication. I mean, there were a bunch of issues, risk, but for the most part, I did a lot on cybercrime. And I really, truly, I've seen how much Visa has to try to combat lots of fraud. People go where the money is, right? We're seeing this now. You're seeing rug pulls because people go where the money is. And I've seen KYC be super effective. I've seen, some of these things are really actually like intended to preserve the integrity of the networks and trust in the system. And so I don't align with a lot of the strong ideologies in crypto, but I understand where they come from. And so I constantly reevaluate and ask myself, okay, is this, in my opinion, an absurd knee-jerk reaction, or is this something, a misunderstanding that this person has? This person being anybody on the internet, kind of in this amorphous space. I'm putting them all in this box right now. That's a little unfair. But I guess my point is, we have rules where, at least you don't have to track necessarily and explain to the government where your data is, or who you're selling something to, or where it's going, unless it's over $10,000, right? Is that the right level? I don't know. I mean, I'm not in it enough to know about me. Oh, it should really be 5,000, or no, it should be 100,000, or we shouldn't have it at all, right? I think we should have a number where we start to track money laundering and potential fraud and all of that. I mean, I think that I think we need it for integrity and trust in the system. So, I don't know, though. I don't think the Wild West is necessarily and have the government track nothing.
It's a difficult dilemma, right?
It's a difficult dilemma. Yeah. I'm still thinking about it. Let's put it that way, right? Like I'm not in that space enough to really have an opinion that I drive home and go, this is what you should all be thinking, right? But I'm just giving you a little bit about where I'm at right now. And I'm not in crypto for the ideology behind the original blockchain and original, yes, cryptocurrencies. So, I don't know. It's more like convince me, right?
No. I'm not trying to convince you either. I was just curious to know what your thoughts were on that. But I like that take.
Right. I mean, my thoughts are, I think we should be looking at all sides of like, how do we make sure that we are appropriately protecting people, but not protecting them to a point of paternalistic, like restricting them, right? So I look at things like, look, when if we're not accredited investors, we were never allowed to invest in, yes, like the Google and, AOL at the time, right? Like we weren't allowed to because we were not considered sophisticated enough to. So the Jobs Act actually allowed crowdfunding, regulation crowdfunding, and now we are allowed to invest alongside as just regular people, invest alongside accredited investors. That's cool. That brought us into the fold. It was like, before it was like, you're too much, you're not educated enough to be able to make this, yes, potential investment that can actually be wealth and life-changing. And then, a lot of people are kind of pissed off about that. Like, don't tell me I'm not sophisticated enough. You're now denying me this opportunity to make a lot of money off of what I think the future looks like. So, well, that's happening now. People are allowed to do that, right? And you're allowed to invest in that through regulation crowdfunding and through crypto. But crypto is going to have its own set of unique challenges that I don't think it's off for the government to put some rules around. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I don't think that. I think we're a nation of rules.
We're on the same boat. My audience. We know we need regulation, but we're concerned about how hard the regulation could be, right? That's always the concern, because
it's a concern we should all have. Absolutely.
Because a little old Gary over there, Gary's having a blast saying that rules are clear and all that. We're not a big fan of Gary. I don't know if you know that, but Gary at CC, he's been putting.
Oh, got it. I'm like, who's Gary? Shows you how closely I'm following. Now I get it.
Gary, he's been throwing a little bit of a wrench in our things, but let's see what he does.
Right, with XRP, sure.
See what he does, but
makes sense.
That's a personal thing with me and him. Let's see where that
right
goes.
and then it's a personal thing, right? It's a Gary thing that maybe, and not necessarily I mean, we're all going to have our own opinions, right? I think government's workable. Other people want to just tear down government, so like we're not on the same page.
It's okay. Yeah. Let's see. So I do have this this one thing I was curious about. So a little while ago, the Hedera Governing Council allocated around $5 billion to help the ecosystem develop. Where have you seen the most development happening with those funds? And also, you did say there are still funds that are going to be deployed in the future. Do you have kind of like maybe a little sneak peek as to where that could go down the road? I like poking around to see if I could get something.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I think this is super exciting, because what this is doing, right? Because so many people were upset. When I say people, I mean Redditors, right? Twitter people, like the social media retail speculators have been frustrated that the Hedera team has not been marketing on their behalf, on retailers' behalf. And that's something that the Hedera team feels pretty, restricted by. Like, look, they're trying to not do anything that's going to hurt them regulatorily until there's more clarity around what they are able to do or aren't. Especially since the Hedera wants to be seen as a commodity. It's a public utility, not as a security. And so in walking this line, they have to take a conservative approach. And so what this is doing is giving the Hedera Foundation, the HBAR Foundation, a separate independent organization that now has lots of HBAR to give out, to give grants out to companies that are going to have lots of transactions and high throughput. And so the goal is now that the HBAR Foundation is kind of the, providing the capital to companies that are saying, look, we have all this, all these transactions and throughput we're going to put on the network. And the HBAR you're giving us today, we're going to put that right back on the network through these transactions. Maybe they'll use like, hey, a company might receive the grants and then give out some free HBAR to help drive adoption on their service, which will drive adoption of the network, which will drive up, right? So we do this with lots of different companies and give them millions of dollars. I mean, we have billions to give, but that's going to be over time, right? It's a 100-year company. And plus it'll go up in value is the theory. And so now the HBAR Foundation has a lot more flexibility to come out with a little marketing focused, a little more sponsorship of, I saw it yesterday that they sponsored a particular influencer's blog. So, there seems to be a lot more flexibility there. What was the original question?
Where have you seen the most development with those funds?
Right. Well, I'm not sure I could say, so I am in some discussions because I'm an advisor as well. Besides my work with the Hedera, I'm a part-time privacy strategist for them. I'm also an advisor to just under 10 privacy tech and ethical tech startups. And then actually a few companies that are doing some work with Hedera right now as well. I'm not going to mention things, but there are a few of the companies that I've either invested in or have, or I'm advising that are seeking funds from the Hedera HBAR Foundation. I would say that right now, I can't tell you like where I see it going because I only see my slice of the world. But what I can say is that it'll take a little, the HBAR Foundation is getting its sea legs, right? Once it was announced, they were a small team before they scaled up and got that money to scale up. taking in all these requests from companies that are seeking money from them, and they have to do their due diligence. They're not giving out just 100 grand here. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars, right? They've got to do their due diligence. So it's taking a little longer than you all want to see some announcements about what will be given grants to drive network adoption. But that hasn't happened yet, and I can't steal their thunder. I don't know enough to say this is where it's all going. I only know my small slice of what I've seen. And I can tell you that the team is working really hard right now, like iterations and iterations of the proposals and just to make sure that I's are dotted, T's are crossed. Because they don't even have the processes in place. They're creating them right now, right? So, keep that in mind. Like, they're working really hard to let us know, and bring these grants to fruition. And it just hasn't happened yet. It'll drop when it drops.
Yes. I knew I had to poke around, but that was plenty of information that got me even more excited. So really, thank you for saying.
I think you should be excited. I mean, the big thing about Hedera having the HBAR Foundation, what we saw in the market was, what we normally see, buy the rumor, sell the news, right? So once that was announced, what the big announcement was, right, which was huge. We saw Hedera drop again because this is a completely irrational market anyway.
Yes.
And and that's all I'll say about the market. But we should keep in mind that the announcement itself of the new HBAR Foundation, while huge, is nothing compared to the grants they're going to give out and the announcements when they make them, right? Like, it was only the first part. That was only part one. So we should stay excited. I mean, $5 billion is like
a lot. It's a lot.
Laughably exciting. Like, it's just mind-blowing excitement. So, we should continue that excitement. It's just, I think we've got these short attention spans as humans these days. We've been, we want everything like quick and now, and it's really hard to hold on for the long term because Hedera's building out a long-term vision. And honestly, I think it's the right move. But it's also hard to wait and sit and wait when you're just so excited for the future to be here, right?
If there's one thing I could do better than most people is I could wait and not, and I like doing less, specifically on the investment side. It's like things like this, I teach people, I'm like, people do a little bit of research and learning how to buy an asset or a stock. People do less research learning how to sell it, but almost no one does any research on how to own what they already bought. Right. Me, I like the idea of owning what I have. Right. And interviews like this makes me want to own even more. I'm owning after this call, Jordan. Right?
Oh, that's funny.
But it's very important. And I really appreciate you saying all that, because you did hit a great point stating that Hedera has plenty more money to deploy, and it can be the price is still yet to appreciate in value as well. So it'll probably be more money to deploy in the future than we can even imagine. So it's very exciting. It's very
right.
very
And it's in the hands of the HBAR Foundation, which is completely independent, separate organization with affiliation that it was like birthed from Hedera. That's where the affiliation ends. And then, of course, some people, well, it's not where it ends, because some people from Hedera moved over to the HBAR Foundation, but they're run separately. They have completely different missions, and they are not in any way, jointly collaborating or colluding on anything, right? So that's very important. Hedera could not have done a lot of the things that the HBAR Foundation, being an independent organization, can do. And I think that that's going to, that's exciting. It's exciting to see what they end up doing in terms of accelerating the ecosystem development and bringing people onto the platform, because that's really their mission right now.
Yeah, that's excellent. And kind of along those lines, I'm going to get to the audience questions, because one of those has to go with what you just said. Patrick asked, if an individual was looking to build their project on Hedera, how would someone go about starting the process? I'm aware of the grant Hedera is offering to individuals. Can you go a little deeper into that?
Yes. So if somebody is interested, like they have a problem they know they want to solve, they know they want to solve it with distributed ledger technology. Maybe they don't necessarily know where to go to. They're thinking about building it on Hedera, but they don't necessarily, maybe they're not a dev themselves. Hopefully you won't get inundated with this, but what I normally do is I just, email Christian Hasker, make the intro and say, Christian's the chief marketing officer at Hedera. So it's usually I pass them off to someone on the, to Christian, and I say, hey, look, this person's looking for a developer advocate that's going to help them like really flesh out like, what is it they're trying to build? What aspect, is it an NFT? Is it an AppNet? Is it, a DAO? Like what, and based on the type of problem being solved, is it a Hedera consensus service or Hedera token service that they need, right? So really just guide them on like what product, where, and then state, hey, here are some of the, system integrators that we work with that can help you build this, or, so there is, everybody is somewhere on their journey, and we try to meet them where they're at. And so what I would suggest is to reach out to Christian, and unless Christian has a different, way, a different intake way, that's the only way I know right now. Or reach out to someone who is a developer advocate on social media and ask them, hey, who do I go to? And they'll, I'm sure, be very helpful.
So if I were to personally message Christian and be like, I need a developer to build me an app on Hedera, we could get somehow, because I have an idea that really kept me up at night last night. I really want to see it through. So is that possible for me? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the developer advocates are for. So my understanding, is that that's the case, that he'll be like, what do you, he'll either take the call himself, that might not be sustainable in the long term, but right, or be like, oh, you're doing this, and pass it on to somebody else on the team who he thinks would be like a good developer advocate for that particular scenario. Because, if someone's like, I want to build something for central banks, and then, versus I want to build an NFT solution, it would be vastly different people he'd be sending you to, as you'd imagine. And so, I mean, he's been very, very available on social media when it comes to those things. And he continues to tell people, reach out when XYZ, or reach out to me and I'll help you with that. So, hopefully Christian's not like, thanks for sending everybody my way. No, he wouldn't. This is what we're here for, right? And I'm, even myself, I'm very active on Reddit and social, Twitter, LinkedIn, because, the marketing team's job, and I am working with the marketing team, is to engage externally, right? Is to get people to understand our market and, reach out when they have questions, so we can put you on the right path.
And for any of you guys at home wondering why I was asking or what I was doing, yes, I do have something that I'm curious to see if I could get help with, but also for all of you, it's about showing you the process where if you want to maybe bring an idea to this world, how would that go? How would that go? And Debra, I think you answered that for the audience at home.
And it'll be interesting to see, how much of that moves over to the HBAR Foundation versus stays within the Hedera proper. So that might change. It might be in the future that there's more developer advocates at the HBAR Foundation, but, for now, I suggest going to Christian, just pinging him on Twitter or something.
Yes, without a doubt, guys, without a doubt. Now, we're almost done. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're very busy. But there's one question here that states from Raymond, can you recommend any book related to your field of expertise?
Ooh, yes. So now none of the books include distributed ledger technology. So my area of expertise that I would most want to promote would be Strategic Privacy by Design, and that's by Jason Cronk. Another really good one that's not as recent, but it's from my professional idol and friend, Michelle Dennedy, and that is the Privacy Engineer's Manifesto. Those are two seminal works that I think would really help enlighten people to what does it mean to help with data protection and privacy within like an enterprise, or how do you think about it as you're building a product or service?
Very
Like,
nice.
what are the risks and how do you work backwards from avoiding those risks? And, you know, how do you think about that risk and break it up into, you know, different pieces, and how do you architect for it? And it's good stuff.
Yes, excellent. Ray, I hope you got that one. That was a powerful one right there. Now, two more questions, one from the audience and then the last one for me. And then maybe Jordan has another one to throw in there because, oh, you don't? Way to ruin it. No, I'm kidding. So it says here from Patrick, thank you for your time and sharing your insights. His question is Hedera implementing security protocols and maintaining privacy controls to not solicit your information to third-party entities or things along that nature?
So yes. Okay. So my white paper that should come out this week, and if it doesn't, I don't know, it should come out this week. It's a great opportunity for me to explain how I address the white paper. So at first, I'm talking about, I give a crash course in data protection law. I really strip out the legalese and just kind of like get to the nuts and bolts of like, what are the rights that exist that when you're an organization now become obligations on your part. Like as a company, you have the obligation that if someone says, I want to know all the personal data that you collect about me, that you are then able to show that person, here's all the data I collect about you. That means you needed to set up your services so that you could be able to display that information. And it's much harder if you've been around, 30-year company that needs to do this, because then you have to like discover where that information is and what's connected to it and all that. It's a Herculean effort for large companies right now.
Yes.
What's that?
Yes, it is. It is.
So as a result, so I stripped that all down and I really explained like, here's what data protection law means in the context of DLT, data minimization, right? Like that's what tokenization is. You're minimizing your exposure to the personal data, but you're still identifiable on the back end, right? So NFTs, all of this, we could talk another time about how the future will be tokenized. The future is not just tokenized, but pseudonymized. So when we think about tokenization, from a privacy perspective, we think about it's pseudonymous data, right? Not anonymous. If we had anonymous data, we would not be able to do NFTs. So there's an exciting world here. Anyway, and then, so basically what I want to say, it's all built into how the network was created to enable these different things. And then I talk about how Hedera's network services are, what are the privacy characteristics of those network services? So rather than get into very specifics right now, like what are the privacy characteristics of an account? What are the privacy characteristics of, HCS? I want to just kind of throw out there that pseudonymization is really like the theme we should be thinking about, data minimization, and then the white paper will really like hone in on what some of those other areas are that you can kind of pull together. And then in the end, I give like some advice on how to architect, with privacy in mind and avoiding some of the pitfalls. Like for instance, how do you delete data when it's an immutable ledger, right? Well, don't put, because you have to delete personal data when someone says, I want you to delete all the data about me. This is why privacy and data protection is essential conversation in an enterprise, DLT world, because global laws are still applicable, right? I know that crypto is the Wild West for some, but it's not like privacy has not been thought about for decades and decades with lots and lots and lots of academics and from all over the place. It's not just I want to be not identified during a transaction, and be anonymous. Like that is an edge case in most of our lives. We don't walk around with masks on our face, obscuring our identity every day, unless it's a pandemic. We are ourselves, and it's like, no, I'm going to choose in this context what I want to share with you or what I don't. But I'm still Debra Farber in this context. I'm not sitting here with a bag over my head and just, voice modulation to make it sound like you can't tell who I am. Yeah. So there's a lot to still be learned, because I think definitely in the crypto space, people are still thinking about anonymity equals privacy. And if you don't have anonymity, you're not even worth talking about. And you're like, not to say that Hedera doesn't have an ability to, remain anonymous in ways and such. You can, in the way that it's deployed. My point is, that's not the thing you optimize for. That's just one flavor of how do you obfuscate, how do you protect people, and it's done. And it really should only be done in edge cases, in my opinion. Or it's done to, so that you could have free speech in an environment. It's more of a free speech issue to be anonymous than it is a privacy issue. Because, and I here's my last thing I'll say about it. I like to compare it to, in the security world, when people say, how do I make sure that I'm the most protected in the security world? And the answer is unplug. If you unplug your computer has no risk, right? Yes. I mean, arguably, like, maybe there's some risk on it, but like, it has no risk from the internet if it's not plugged in. Well, it's the same thing. If your identity is unplugged and you literally are anonymous, then there is no privacy problem. Sure, but it's not about privacy anymore. You've just rendered it like no one can know who you are. So there's no longer a privacy problem, but you're just basically unplugged, right? Yes. I think privacy, we have to think about all the things about when we are known as a human being in a public space, and then making sure that all the actors who have access to any of the information about myself, when I share it, is not going to use that information and it gives me the trust to be able to share that information, and that they're not going to use it in a nefarious way or be irresponsible with it or use it to surveil me or use it, right? That's privacy. And by just claiming anonymity, we're avoiding all the conversation about that nuance of privacy.
Yes, and that's an important distinction that can't be stressed enough, guys. Very, very important. Now, what I'll say is, for the common man, and this will be me kind of wrapping things up as well. For the common man, what privacy measures can we take when it comes to maybe our phones, maybe computers, things like that? How can we best protect ourselves just in our everyday lives?
Yeah, well, I think honestly, everything comes with anything technology related is going to come with a set of defaults. And so I would just make sure that you understand the, all the different toggles and things and settings that, might give you more of a sense of privacy. So the way things should be built ethically and according to like most laws today, it should be built with, privacy by design and default, which means that by default, all the toggles are set to the most restrictive, where you share the least. So that if you want to share more, then you go to the defaults and say, I'd like to share more about myself, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. Most companies don't really respect that. I mean, it's by law. This is the European Union came, GDPR requires this by default. California requires by default. But we're still not really seeing it actually being built like that all the time, right? We see things where toggles are like, oh, your toggle is on so that you're opting into our newsletter, or like things like that. Should not be that way. So I would say just make sure, go through all your defaults on, make sure that you have all your settings, maybe quarterly go through and kind of take a look at what your settings are, and then reassess what your threat model is. So for me, I've been saying for a long time, I am not a very private person. Like, I actually might be more of an oversharer, right? But many people might actually consider me more of an oversharer. And I don't even mean this conversation. I mean, generally, I'm not generally a private person. Mm-hmm. But even I'm getting much more exposure than I'm used to, right? Like yesterday, I watched a YouTube blogger for 5 minutes read my long ass, Reddit comment. And that was the essence of the post, the video, and it's been viewed 2,000 times. And all he did was read my Reddit comment. Now, I'm not upset by it, but boy, do I feel a little exposed, right? I feel a little like 2,000 people watch this. guy read for 5 minutes, something
Just-
that could have been like a link to my Reddit comment. But
just wait until people watch this one.
well, right. And don't you think I thought that too? And so I'm now rethinking to how exposed do I feel? I might want to restrict some settings on my social media or whatever, because this is outside of my domain and now outside of my comfort zone, that you have a much wider, broader audience. My point here is to share that privacy is about context. Context matters always. Depending, you think about the context in which you'd share information with a doctor versus some rando on the street you meet, right? Like context matters. And so you have to reevaluate over time what you're comfortable with. And so I do that quarterly. Others can do that whatever pace you want. But that's my suggestion, is just always reevaluate your current thinking, your current feelings of exposure, or, you know, whatever goes into your own thought process. But that's what I would suggest to you.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Debra, what I'll say is, I don't think I have any more questions. Jordan has stated he doesn't have any more questions, and the VIPs haven't had any more questions come up either. So,
Well, I've answered everything. Nobody has anything else to ever ask.
you have all the answers.
There is one. There is one if you want to look after Raymond Ball. And if Debra, we can steal you for 2 more minutes.
Oh, you can
Okay,
still do it.
okay. Yeah, this just came up. All right. Final question. Does Hedera see Global ID as a partner or a competitor?
It's a good question. I don't even know who Global ID is.
Global
I'm
ID
so sorry.
is Greg Kidd's company in crypto. Greg Kidd. He used to be at Ripple, a early investor in
Oh,
Twitter.
I see.
Yeah.
So someone I should know, I just don't. I'm so sorry. There's a lot I need to learn about XRP too. And because I haven't been able to buy it during the time I've been into crypto because of the legislation, I have to admit I have not done my own research enough yet there. So I promise you, I will do more of it after this call. And maybe I'll even like shoot you a Twitter message or two to send me on the right track. But I haven't been following that. I'm so sorry.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah.
But now we've officially answered every question, Debra.
Okay.
I have
This has been so much fun. Thank
I have
you.
to say again, thank you so much for taking the time out. You're an absolute beast. I've learned a lot today, and I still have so much that I know I'm gonna want to ask in the future. So it's
Well,
gonna
great. I'd be glad to come back. So you know,
it's
this
gonna
has
be
been a pleasure. I could talk about this stuff all day. So, you know, I like it. I love
We'll
it.
definitely have you on another time to make sure, once Hedera has more of the compliance thing going on in the world
There
in
you
the
go.
United States, then we're really gonna see how special this one can be, right? So
Excellent.
everybody, thanks for tuning in. Debra, thank you for being here. Jordan, my brother, that was another great one. Peace out, guys. Much love. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.